Lapid, now we discuss the situation up there. Look, Hezbollah appears isolated like never before. You know, the U.S. is obviously in the region laying down the heat. The Syrians have locked down their border to some degree. The central government in Beirut is issuing all sorts of moves against them. The Israelis, of course. What does this fight look like this time?
Yeah, this is a very different Hezbollah than the one that we met in the last war. And I agree with the premise in your question. It is more isolated than ever before. It's got the Sunni regime of al-Shara in Syria to its east, blocking it off, totally different from the pro-Hezbollah, pro-Iranian Assad regime. It's got a new Lebanese government that is openly hostile to the Iranian takeover of Lebanon, trying to ban Hezbollah, and is genuinely interested in seeing the Iranian Hezbollah Shiite chokehold removed from Lebanon. So that is a challenge, even if the Lebanese government doesn't know yet how to enforce its will. Just the fact that they're making the statements is a big harm to Hezbollah's political legitimacy. And we've got Israel, a new Israel, an Israel which is taking the initiative, which doesn't just sit and wait for enemies to grow stronger, but takes the initiative and doesn't accept any equations. Hezbollah launched a relatively small volley at Haifa back on March 2nd, and Israel said, you made the decision. By the way, this was because Iran heavily pressurized Hezbollah to get into this war. That's it. Now you're involved in a war. You fired on our civilians on the biggest northern city. We in Israel don't care if it's a small volley, a big volley. That's a declaration of war. That's a completely different Israel than the one that Hezbollah has gotten used to. So they are isolated, David, and they are, I would say, weaker than they've been in a while. But the flip side of that is that they are still determined jihadists. They're not going to disappear. I think we have to view them, when we're trying to assess their strength, look at it as a spectrum rather than a sort of binary here or gone equation. I would look at it as a spectrum. They're gradually getting weaker. This conflict is going to make them even weaker because the Israeli Air Force is pummeling their capabilities and their commanders in Beirut, in southern Lebanon, in the Bekaa Valley. But that doesn't mean that they're going to disappear. And the other big question is, are they going to enter into a civil war with the Lebanese state, which really wants them under control? So those are big questions. At the end of the day, I think they're going to become weaker because of this war. They are being targeted systematically. Most of the Israeli Air Force is still busy with Iran, but a good chunk of a minority of the Air Force's resources are being daily directed. We see the airstrikes targeting command and control, rocket launchers, UAV, and munitions warehouses all across Lebanon. We're seeing high-level eliminations also of the Quds Force, the Iranian Quds Force. Its commanders in Beirut, are being targeted. So they're under heavy pressure. They're answering back with rocket attacks, precise missile attacks, anti-tank missile attacks against Israeli forces. Yeah. They're definitely trying to do that. And, this is going to continue a while longer. A last thing that I will notice that there's now an expanded Israeli ground presence in southern Lebanon. This is not a ground offensive. This is the beginning of an enlarged security zone in southern Lebanon. We are seeing that. The IDF has announced that. That's a protective layer because there's no other way to protect the northern communities. They can't be left with no buffer between them and Hezbollah. So things are changing, David, and none of the changes are to Hezbollah's favor.
Yaakov, thanks for being with us again on this. We'll see you in the hours to come with much more, Yaakov.
We haven't seen a significant change in the pattern in recent days. The Iranians are trying to fire more frequently in order to disrupt and terrorize and kill and maim Israelis, but they are not firing large volleys. They're firing relatively small volleys, especially compared to the first 48 hours of this war when they were, firing dozens of missiles per day. Now it's much less than that. We've had volleys that have between 1 to 3 missiles, and that doesn't really seem to be changing as far as the latest data is concerned. We have to analyze what was fired earlier today, but that seems to be the pattern. And on top of that, we see that Hezbollah, when it sees that there are alerts here in Israel, it is trying to jump on the bandwagon with its own rocket fire. Yesterday, it said it fired a precise rocket. It's Iranian-made Fatah 110. It's actually a missile because it's guided. And they, targeted a military installation as well as a second base in central Israel. So we are seeing this double threat. But in terms of the size, I don't see a big change. The Iranians have settled into this pattern of firing frequently but small volleys. And on the Iranian side, in addition to the eliminations of senior terrorist leaders, like what you just alluded to, there is a constant and continuous flow of Israeli fighter jets and armed drones that are going out there to Iran, flying east and destroying command centers that are used to coordinate these strikes. The launchers themselves, most of the launchers that the Iranians have left, probably less than 100 at this stage. Most of those are mobile launchers. These are trucks.
And we're getting those reports, Yaakov, that these are almost one-off launches as well. I think a lot of these missile crews are having a hard time repeat launching once they reveal their location, too. As you mentioned, the Israeli Air Force deployed out there heavily with their drones.
That's right. As soon as they fire, then the radar location, we don't have to be in classified information to know that once a missile goes up in the air, it's possible to try and estimate where it came from based on radar and other kinds of data. And then the race is on, the hunt is on, and also to preempt. I mean, the Israeli Air Force wants to ideally get to these launchers before they even fire their missile in Israel's direction, as well as that of the Gulf countries. So this is what's going on. We're also seeing very heavy strikes, David, targeting the Iranian military-industrial complex, the entire a complex that's responsible for the mass production of missiles is under heavy aerial attack. And so the longer this goes on, the more capabilities Iran's going to lose.
Yaakov, stay with us. We'll put you on the shelf. We'll come back to you a little later in our broadcast.